All right, we are live again for another episode of Talk Power BI. Hello and welcome, my friends. So, if you're joining us live, make sure to say hello and let us know where you're watching us from. This is Avi, by the way, from Seattle. And yeah, I love hearing where people are from. So, do that. Now, today is going to be a special episode. This only happens a few times in the year. So, folks, today you're going to get a real account of some real Power BI projects. Now, what I'll say is that I often, well, of course, go to conferences and they're great, right? I mean, I learn a lot from them, but one thing that I take exception to is that often you go there and everybody who's up on the stage tries so hard to look polished, look perfect, but what you're seeing is just kind of above the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, real Power BI, stepping into real projects, in a way, it's about problem solving, right? So, and of course, that does mean that there are going to be problems, and it's about how you get around them. But sometimes we paint this beautiful picture. So we're going to hear from some folks who have gone through this experience, and they're going to share it kind of unfiltered, and I'm looking forward to that. All right, so let's. I'm going to check in on the chat. Wow, so a lot of you are there. So that's pretty cool. Nice. So let's see. G. Rampa was waiting. Cool. We got here. Michael Stanton. Good to have you on, my friend. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Yeah, Michael has appeared on our show before. Jen Abel is here. Good to see the usual faces. Gary says hi. From Connecticut, Hartford. I think I'd stayed there briefly. Mohammed Akhtar says hi. Sully says hi from UK. Mohammed Rafi says hi all. Your Rabes says hi from Tunisia. Hello. All right. Mohammed Akhtar says from Mauritius. Hello, hello. And Judy from Gilroy, California. Irshad says hi. Debussy says hi from Bangalore. All right, awesome. Glad to have you guys all on. Okay, so let me see. And of course, we have our presenters today on the phone, but we also have our Learn Power BI members joining us on the phone as they usually do. And we have a shout outs from Daisy from Chicago, Bruce Stanfield from San Antonio, Texas, Charles from Holland. Michigan. Yeah, it threw me off there. I'm like, what? No. All right. Of course, you all know Charles, right? So Charles has appeared on our show quite a few times as well. And Victor is here again from Tucson, Arizona. Victor, good to have you on. And of course, most importantly, Anthony Lipinski. So he's going to kick us off. So folks, this was the plan. And as I said, I mean, this is going to be real Power BI, so things don't always go according to plan, but that's okay. So the plan was that we have planned for 2 weeks. And no, so of course, these members are part of our Pro Plus group, which I'll talk about later as well. And so almost all of them went through this experience, which we call the Real Power BI. Now, usually there are two options. One is, so if you go to my site, I'll just give you a background of what you're about to see here. And if you look under free resources, Real Power BI, folks on the phone, if you can go on mute just for a second, that'll be great. And hold on, guys. All right. So under free resources, Real Power BI, and you can also, by the way, go to realpowerbi.com. And the idea behind this was to really to make it a win-win. So I know there are businesses out there who are getting started with Power BI and they could use some help, and bring them and bring this community, right? This community of professionals inside our program and match them up, right? So simple, right? So we asked businesses to submit their projects, and then we match them up with the Power BI professionals. And well, I'll say it hasn't all gone to plan, right? But I think that's all still good. In fact, not just that, I think that's even better because we all got to learn quite a bit from this experience, right? So participants as well, and of course we're gonna adjust for next time and kind of make it even better. But it's always a lesson, right? So there are no failures, only lessons, my friend, right? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, this has worked pretty well, and you're gonna see that in a second. So that's the context of Real Power BI. Now, some of the folks, they they chose the option of what we call bring your own project. So they already had a client they were working with or something like that. So that option is there as well. So that's what you're about to see. And so this was a plan. So we had 4 presenters for today and 2 for next week. But there might be a reshuffle. So we'll just play it by the ear. But definitely our first presenter, Anthony, is here. So Anthony, I'm going to hand it over to you. And let's do this. So let's put the focus on you and not me. Awesome, great. So let's go ahead, tell us a bit about yourself, and you can just go on and then step into your project. You can share your screen if you like as well.
Yep. Okay. Sure. My name is Anthony Lipinski. I am from Orlando, Florida. I've been doing Power BI and BI in general, well, Power BI for 5 or 6 years, BI in general for 12 years. And I was lucky enough for my real Power BI project to get matched with a healthcare company. And actually, I believe my client is on the phone as well. Um, and
Nice. Let's see if you have audio. So is it? Sorry, say the name for me again. Name of client.
his name is Jim. I think he's the 412 number
All
probably.
right. So Jim, try to unmute yourself. Or hold on, let me
Um,
unmute you. All right. Yeah, yeah.
can you
I
hear
think
me?
we. Yep, we can. Good to have you
All
on.
right.
And I sincerely appreciate him taking the time. I know he had a conflict, so he made a special effort to be here for this. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Yep, that's
Um,
amazing. Perfect. So, yeah, just roll on. I mean, this is yeah. You have the floor, my friend. I'll try to stay
okay.
as quiet as possible.
So Jim, feel free to interrupt me at any time. But they're a healthcare company. They were trying to start kind of inroads into Power BI, and he had provided me with authorizations, which is authorizing people to get treatment, census, which is how many people are getting treatment, and then length of stay, which is they abbreviate LOS. And so a lot of this, especially in the initial part of it, was a lot of ETL. So extracting the data from the Excel files I was giving,
Hmm.
transforming them and standardizing them so that you could drill across the various data sets with common dimensions, and then calculating length of stay.
Hey, can
This
you give us
was
a sense of the size of the business? Like how is yeah? I mean, what are they? Who are they? Can you give us a sense of size of the business?
Jim. Do you want to take
Yeah,
that
we're
one?
about $80 million a year.
All right, terrific. And do you know how many employees in the company?
Roughly 1,500.
All right, terrific. Thanks, Anthony. Keep going.
Yeah. So, like I said, the initial part of it, a lot of it was standardizing the data because they didn't have a data warehouse. They didn't have even like a standardized kind of list of the different medical sites that they're using. This is all randomized data, obviously because of HIPAA. We've masked all of the patient names, the patient birth dates, the patient ages, and the sites and the states as well. So all of this is kind of dummy data. Um, and so we had the main sort of tabs that we ended up creating was one for census. So you have kind of a comparison of the total census, total number of people getting treatment versus the budgeted amounts. Here you have authorization detail. So this is how many people got permission to get treated by site, by diagnosis, by procedure, and also by month just for the auths. And I'll explain why it's just by month. But what you could do here, obviously, with the Power BI functionality, is you could select any diagnosis, and it would show you the associated sites and procedures that went into treating that diagnosis. You could, then you could also cross drill. So let's say I'm interested in pain in the shoulder for Zulu City. Actually, I think I do both here. I could then drill. So I created a drill through, a patient drill through for them to then be able to see just for that diagnosis in that site. There's more data here that I removed, keys and things, IDs for them to look up, but they could easily see, the patients, the diagnosis, the procedures, the admit and the discharge dates. Um, And then the other one was length of stay, this is probably the most tricky piece of DAX code I've ever written, in that the requirement was that they wanted to see the total number of days that a patient was in occupying a bed, essentially. So, for example, this patient must have checked in on March 25th, occupied for 5 days, 30 days in April, 31 days in May, and then checked out on June 28th. And so writing the DAX code to have these numbers populate correctly was really kind of tricky for me to come up with something snazzy that worked correctly and quickly for their data.
Nice.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Jim. Otherwise, that's pretty much.
Yeah, just add this. That's actually a measurement that we currently don't have today. Like, we don't have a simple way of, finding those patients that cross over various months like that. Aside from kind of doing it by hand or doing it in Excel and just kind of, manually trying to calculate that. So this thing's like huge. This is like my first foray into BI, and coming from like just sort of simple spreadsheets and small databases, and having all this information together on one screen where we can kind of drill through the different procedures and diagnoses, and then get to the patient level is just sort of unbelievable. We would typically in the past we'd have to create a report and then filter the report, and we'd have like a systems analyst type person involved, and there'd be emails back and forth and requests, and the fact that we can kind of do that right now on one screen in a matter of seconds, I'm still kind of blown away by it.
Oh boy, love hearing that. So Jim, thanks so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. So Anthony, yeah, that's great. So of course, I'm as you were showing this stuff, a lot of questions pop in my head, but I'll hold them till you give me the signal, right? So whenever you're ready for a few questions from me, just let me know.
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Go ahead.
So, give us a time frame for this. How long was this engagement for?
We started working together, I believe, in early September. So, like right after we had gotten matched up, I reached out to Jim, and we had a call with kind of a preliminary. He had an idea of in his mind of what he wanted. Of course, his initial idea had a lot more data in it than we were ultimately able to, unfortunately, to tackle. But I think that what we did tackle, given the way that the data was when I initially got it, is pretty good, I think. And
love that. Hey, do you mind switching us back to the dashboard view?
Oh, sure.
Terrific. So guys, I'm just going to say back what Anthony said. So initially, Jim had an idea of a lot of different things to do, and Anthony said that, well, they were not able to do it, but I really think that that's not unfortunate. That is, I think, great, right? So, of course, that means I've done my job. So, of course, every person in the Pro Plus group, I've talked to them about Agile BI, and I think that's the only, if you ask me, that's the only right way to do things. So I'm glad you approached it that way. You said, hey, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So you took off a piece and said, hey, let's focus on this. And when you started to kind of prioritize what are the things to focus on, did you work with Jim on that? Was it pretty clear, or did it take some work to kind of figure out that, hey, what do we focus on first?
Well, he provided me with the most straightforward data first, and the site dimension, which was really kind of key, because even across the different kind of data sets, the site wasn't exactly the same across. So the first kind of steps were getting that site dimension sort of normalized, getting keys, attached to everything, and then creating the within Power Query, creating kind of like the composite key to make that site connection between these different data sets, so that you could drill across them quickly and correctly.
All right. So where are the two of you physically located?
So I'm in Orlando, and I think Jim is in Philadelphia.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania. Yep.
All right. Nice. So, and of course, what about kind of working remotely? I know initially when I started, it took some getting used to, but how did you feel about that?
I thought it was great. Anthony and I had sort of a kickoff meeting. I sort of took my takeaways from that. Number one was go get some data, and
Yeah.
kind of package it up and get it, off to Anthony. We, signed a non-disclosure agreement like right out of the gate, so we kind of have that taken care of. I would send him the data. We would have a follow-up meeting. We would kind of talk about, what we could do, what we wanted to do with the data, shortcomings in the data. We would kind of scurry back to our offices and, take care of the next steps, and then sort of regroup like every week. And I thought it was great. It was, once we kind of got rolling, it was just update meetings is really all it was.
Wow.
Yeah, as we're iterating through our data issues or our issues questions I had about business logic and things.
Oh, that's great. So just to be clear, this was not both of you working kind of full-time 40-hour weeks, right? It was probably much less than that. Is that right?
Yeah, it was
Terrific.
much less on my part.
Wow. And of course, Anthony, he has a full-time role as well, right? So I'm sure this was kind of the hours you could find outside of that. So that's great. So Jim, if I may ask you, what's the next step? What does the road ahead look like for you and your company when it comes to Power BI?
We probably want some more dashboards. There's some other areas that Anthony alluded to earlier that I kind of wanted to include in this, for the sake of time and complexity. We kind of left those out.
All right, but tell me maybe a little bit of what dashboards would do. What are the problems that you're looking to solve, or what are the the new things that you're looking to enable that, oh yeah, having that dashboard and this data would let us do this?
It's going to help us identify, like in healthcare, costs are sort of rampant. It's going to help us identify areas that need improvement in, the costs are sort of out of control, and where we're going to implement quality projects and sort of bring those costs back in line. That kind of stuff. Like we noticed that there's certain drugs that we buy from different vendors, and depending on who we buy it from, we get many different prices for an identical drug. So that will help us sort of identify who the best vendor is to purchase those drugs from.
Wow.
And maybe push back on some of the more expensive vendors to say, hey, we're getting this across the street for half of what you're trying to sell it to us for.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's beautiful. Hey, thanks for kind of getting into that detail, because I had this vision. It's like, you're drowning in a sea of data, right? You talked about all these different pricing, different vendors, and I know healthcare can be like that. And one of my friends used this code, and he said, "We're drowning in a sea of data, but there's not a drop to drink, so you're going thirsty still." So and that can really be frustrating. It's terrific. So Anthony, Jim, thank you so much. That was really great. We're going to switch over to the next one. But again, big thanks to both of you. So let's switch over to next one in for presenting, and that's going to be Greg. And I'm told that Greg has not one, but two projects he wants to talk about. So that's going to be great. Greg, let's do an audio check. Let's make sure we can hear you.
Sure. Can you hear me here?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you. I'm going to put you up on the screen here. Awesome. Good to have you on. And yep, floor is yours. You can talk about it when the time is ready. You can share your screen. Of course, certainly, first of all, tell us a bit about yourself, about your company, and yep, we'll go from there.
You bet. So I've just recently, my name is Greg Baerg. Just recently moved into full-time Power BI consulting. Definitely been boosted by the help of Avi's program here, the Pro Plus program. It's been an awesome chance to learn, and a great group of members collaborating together.
So I'll be positive. So your company is Big Wave BI? BigWaveBI.com?
Yeah, sorry, Big Wave BI.
Awesome. So I just wanted to call out that, hey, folks, we're going to link to at least the LinkedIn profiles, and where they have their own websites and so forth, we're going to link to the websites too, so you can reach out to these awesome professionals. Of course, you can see, you've already seen a sample, you've already heard Jim, and you can see the impact that this can have. So if you need help, by all means, reach out to these folks, and they're going to be available. Or at all times, you can also go to our website, learnpowerbi.com, and just hit the contact button, and we can always connect you with an awesome Power BI professional like Greg. So again, Greg, Big Wave BI. All right, mate, carry on.
Okay, you can see my screen here?
Yep, we can. We're looking
Awesome.
at the oil rigs. Oh, that's exciting.
Okay. Yeah, so I was fortunate to be able to pick two really interesting projects for me. This first one I wanted to talk about was a project in the oil field maintenance sector. And my client was an individual who's the spare parts maintenance manager for about 32 of these oil platforms, similar to what you see here. So let me just get this slide going. So the objective of this project was to take his existing reporting. So he wanted to automate a weekly report that he has to send out every week to his customer, and it looks a lot like what you see in the screen grabs. I've tried to take snippets of it. It was a very large Excel file with a lot going on.
Do you know how many sheets were in there?
I would guess about 15 or so.
Okay, that's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah. These visualizations, I tried to pare down and show samples of it, but yeah, he really wanted to improve it and streamline it. It was taking him a lot of time to maintain it. In fact, some of the ones you see here, he simply wasn't able to keep up with it. And it sounded like he inherited the spreadsheet and he built upon it. So it was definitely cobbled together. A lot of VLOOKUPs, a lot of pivot tables, and charts here, all interconnected. So it was a bit of a spider web to unwind. So this is a quote from him. The business problem said, I have to create a dashboard and monitor the individual work progress of 30 technicians, 30 disciplines from 2 different office locations. Just to give you a sense of the size of the company, it's large. I believe around 15,000 employees.
Wow.
So it's a large maintenance company.
Hey, can you do me a favor? I'm not sure if it's you or someone else. I hear a little bit of a feedback. If you have me on speakers, just lower down the volume just a little bit so you can still hear me, but maybe I'll reduce the echo. And again, it might be somebody else. Hey, for somebody else, folks, just go on mute for now. And yeah, all right, keep going.
How's that now?
Yeah, actually, that is good. Yep.
Okay, I'll keep going. Stop me if it's bad. The rest of his quote here, the data sequence in the rows are always changing, and I have to do manual manipulation of the data to compile the data from several sources. So some of those manual manipulations, just going back to here, there were temporary sheets that he'd pull raw data into, perform some VLOOKUPs and calculated cells, and then put it back into the source data. It took quite a bit of time understanding everything he did as part of those manipulations. In fact, we would have a weekly call, and I wasn't getting the same result when I pulled things into Power BI and Power Query. So he would then remember, oh yeah, we got to filter out this column, or there was a whole series of steps that wasn't well documented, I would say.
Well, I'll say that I definitely identify with that life a lot. I mean, this was like a time travel, put me right back there. And folks on the phone, if you have lived that life, or maybe you're still in it, then yeah, put in a comment, let us know. Yeah, I mean, everything that you said, it's like, yeah, it's kind of what I call the data spaghetti, right? And you're never really sure. I was like, is it working? I think it is. I mean, but you just still cross your fingers, right? So yeah,
Totally.
Keep going.
Yeah. So some of the challenges I wrote down here. So the Excel file, the source data had 200,000 rows in Excel for all the spare parts and 32 offshore platforms. I estimated, and I asked him how long it took him. It sounded like it took him a good portion of one day to update this every week. And he made the comment that he just wasn't able to maintain some of it. I've mentioned this before, many VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, and temporary sheets in Excel. And I'll also just add here that some of the source data came from their databases, and some came from the customer's database. So 2 disconnected data sets. I think I've got that. I've got that here in challenge number 2. And he also mentioned he had a real challenge with the fact that there was no date fields available in either of the data sets. So I took a snapshot of what the source data looked like on my end when it came to me. As you can see, it was definitely not consistent. It was named differently every time. This would have been from their database, and then the MIEDR stuff would have been from the customer's database.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to quickly call out one thing. So, folks who might see a lot of kind of Excel data files. Now, we do that. In fact, I encourage my students to do that for the real Power BI project because that lets us go the fastest. In the real Power BI is typically just 4 to 5 weeks. That helps us go fastest, but obviously in a real scenario, and even actually after the completion of the project, you can easily switch over to whatever your source data systems are. So, kind of ERP system, SQL, whatever it is. But clearly you have a lot of data coming in, and you had to kind of make sense of that in the Excel sheets. What happened next?
Okay, so yeah, just wanted to highlight this. Just the different naming convention, and I found out later as I was debugging some of the follow-on weeks after it was primarily built, I was starting to have challenges when the new data would roll in, and I ended up picking up the week number from the name of the file, which I'll show in the next few slides.
Mm-hmm.
So in the query editor, I guess I'll say initially I wasn't aware that the data changed every week, that there'd be a new file every week. So on both the client side and the customer side, I knew that one changed, but I didn't realize that both changed. Mm-hmm. And so that actually really changed. It gave me a few challenges down the road when I was halfway into it, but it was definitely interesting learning how to fix that and kind of how to make it work again. So this view here shows this flock follow-up would be the client's data, the MIEDR would be the their customers' data. And so you just get a view here. I connected as a data source to the folders that I showed previously. And this is just kind of the early steps of pulling that and transforming it through a series of steps. Just wanted to show a view of the model relationship. So I mentioned that it was kind of a bit of a curveball to find out later that I had multiple, or the MIEDR file was changing every week. So how I linked that was by using the week from the name of the file. And then initially I had linked just document number to document number, but I was able to create kind of a separation by adding the week on both sides. And that allowed me to preserve kind of a one-to-many relationship there. And so on the visualization side, yeah, I will say my initial thought was to try to reproduce as closely as I could what he had sent me. And then my strategy was to build in some features that could showcase Power BI and kind of the benefits of going into the tool. So this would be modeled very similar to one of the views that he was producing in his Excel sheet. So I was able to get a date field from that week of the year number in the title of the Excel file. And basically the gist of the file is to monitor each of these platforms and understand there's a bit of a process where it'd be kind of like taking your car to the dealership and having a regular maintenance program. And so, you have to do your timing belt every certain number of kilometers or do your brakes at certain intervals. So very similar here. And they divided the platforms into process function groups. So 11 of those. And they wanted to monitor which ones were stuck. And what stuck meant to them is that there was a process by which the procedure would have to get approved by the customer, and there was a few back and forths. They had to sign off on the pricing, the particular parts being used. So stuck to them are the ones that they really want to monitor and understand. If that makes sense. I'll go to the next slide. Again, I tried to model it mostly after what he had given me. He was having to do the week of the year and kind of tabulate on a separate Excel tab, keep track of what the numbers were the previous week, and just keep a running total kind of manually on the side. Whereas this now is doing it automatically, just by pointing to that folder. So we can kind of see the trend of the total number of open maintenance, I'd say, procedures. And then this is assessment of the criticality. So this is what their customer wanted to see. Basically the total number of open that are vital, the most important ones, medium importance, and then secondary importance here. So again, the red is just highlighting the ones that are stuck. So that's where I took it. So I ended up producing, there were 11 of these. So I just duplicated this report just to show each individual process function group.
And just curious, so why do that and not have a slicer? Or did the client just prefer it that way?
Yeah, good point. Initially, I was doing it just to stay on the same page as what he had given me. Okay. And as I got building it, I am currently still working on a one-page dashboard with some spark lines and some KPI visualizations for each of them, and it's just a running list down the side.
Love that. And of course, I've often seen that where you step into something kind of Excel-ish, and yeah, I mean, often my first effort is like, well, whatever they have, I just want to bring it over and say, hey, look, this is their data, it looks the same, da-da-da. But then, of course, you kind of start unraveling all the possibilities in Power BI, which go far beyond, right? So, well, now we could also put it all in one dashboard, and you can have a at a glance view, right? So, cool. That sounds like a pretty cool direction to go in.
Totally. Yeah. And then another thing that I just wanted to show them the possibilities. This was definitely not perfected, but just pulling in kind of a overview, like a plan view of the site, and then binding particular data to each of the fields or each of the SVG shapes. And so just the particular shading just shows which one is the most, has the most, in this case, the number of stuck processes. So I wanted to introduce that to the client and just show them what could be done. Definitely this needs a bit more work, but it also has a matrix table, so you're able to drill down into the data. And I've put some conditional formatting here on each of the columns just to really let the ones jump out that are the biggest. So
nice.
Yeah, and it's a bit of work in progress. I wanted to show it to him. Part of my challenge is the client doesn't have Power BI on his desktop, and he only goes on site to the headquarters every few months. So until that time, he's not able to download it and even put this in front of his customer. So I think it's really important to understand who your audience is and what the needs are at both levels. So I'm kind of putting stuff out there that I think would be beneficial. And
that's quite a roadblock. But so how? What about just using PowerBI.com? Is that an option?
Yeah, it could be. I should say this: like he was able to open it on kind of a personal computer, so he's able to see it, but just not pick up the file and start maintaining it himself. So
got it. But okay, got it. So certainly, so folks, just a quick call out. What I say is whenever I work with our Pro Plus group, and of course, the focus is to become consultants, but I always say that when we're consulting, we're also training, right? Because we don't want to be that old school of consultants where once you hire and you have to be dependent on them for a lifetime. No, in fact, we want the opposite. We want to do the knowledge transfer. We want to explain everything to you so that you're up and running. Hey, this is called self-serve BI for a reason, right? So we want to empower you that way. And of course, if you get stuck, we're going to be there to help you. But that's the whole idea. In fact, some of our students have kind of pioneered, which we're now almost, I'm recommending be made standard practice. So Charles is the one who pioneered it. And he reminded me because, so what he does is so you talked about, you heard Anthony talk about this dynamic of how people work back and forth, where you meet briefly and then you go work offline. But Charles would record the videos and say, "Hey, this is the work that I was done." All right, so quick segue. But Greg, I definitely have to ask you about this visual. That has to be a custom visual. Is that right? The
Yeah,
stuff
that's
by platform name.
the Synoptic Panel by OKViz.
Nice, nice. So
Yeah,
you can upload your own image. So this is right. I mean, this is the layout of their platforms or something, and then lay metrics on it. Right. That's really cool.
yeah, it can find basic shapes, upload a JPEG, or I believe it was a PNG or a JPEG, to the site, and then yeah, just basically recreate the shapes, or auto detect these shapes. And this was a image sent from the client, just in an overview document showing kind of the plan of the site. So
All right, really nice, mate. We might have you come back just to dive deeper into that. All right, keep going.
cool. So yeah, the results. So in the end, it's totally automated reporting with one click of the button, and reducing the update time, from 3 to 4 hours to 5 to 10 minutes refresh, and working on improving the visualizations. So that was the result of that one.
Terrific.
Now, I'm going to jump right into the second one, unless you have any further questions.
No, keep going.
Okay. Project number 2. So again, really, really interesting project to me. It's a car rental company in Saudi Arabia. So here was the problem. The customer wasn't satisfied with the reports he previously developed in SQL Server Reporting Services, SSRS. It was time consuming for him, and he wasn't happy with the visualizations. So there's a quote from him below. Reports already developed report module using SSRS doesn't have attractive visualization, and maintenance or update to these reports is very hectic. And he wanted something in Power BI with good visualizations. So
cool. Hey, Greg, just a quick call out. I realize that I haven't been as good as a timekeeper as I should have been. So, we may not be able to spend as much time on this one.
Got it. I'll go quick. Okay, so the initial challenge I pulled from SQL Server database. We did have an unusual error here, and ended up having to export all of these tables out to text files, and then re-import them into a new Power BI file. So that was the workaround.
Right.
Again, working remotely, he sent me a PBIX file that was connected initially to his database. One thing I wanted to show was, just as I was working on it, the initial file size was 2 gigabytes.
Yeah.
And by the end, it was down to 28. Just by reducing number of tables and
basically following best practices, right? I mean, shaping it right. Yep. All right, terrific.
Yeah.
That's great.
Like all these tables had tons of fields, so I pruned it really down to just the fields that we needed. Mm-hmm. So that's what the the model relationship view looked like. And this would have been the initial dashboard. So just focusing on revenue, just a revenue report showing it. In this case, we filtered just to the year 2019, and it's showing the trend here. So versus last year, they're at 283,000 this year. It's up 30% over last year. Nice. And the next slide just shows the ability to. I've got slicers built in here. I've kind of fuzzed it all out, but I've built in tooltips. If you hover over a particular month, you can see which branch in particular contributed to that revenue, and the year-over-year percentage increase or decrease. In this case, it's an increase. I showed that there. And he had quite a list of different reports he wanted done, and I've set out to do those. I just am showing this one. I picked up this project a little bit later in the whole course. So this is the last slide. I was sticking with the theme of revenue.
Yeah.
And revenue by branch. So I did a Pareto analysis, just showing just all the branches and which ones are highlighted in purple here, kind of really show what contributes to the 80%, 80%
Yeah.
of the revenue,
Man,
which ones are contributing
is
to
that
that.
a
So
custom visual? I mean,
no, this is it's just using a
wow,
measure, a Pareto percentage measure, and just a
that's
line chart,
that's brilliant.
or
I
sorry,
mean,
a bar chart
yeah.
with
So
a line.
I've dabbled with Six Sigma in the past, and yeah, Pareto is a classic tool. Shows you kind of that 80-20 breakdown. So that's great. Hey, two quick questions for you. One is, I see that the text is in Arabic. Was that a challenge for you? Because sometimes I'm debugging data and you couldn't read this. So was that a bit of a challenge for this one?
Well, no, to be honest, I could say
Nice.
that it was, but no.
Mhm.
First of all, he included a field that had an English name in there.
All right, cool.
Um, and Power BI just picks it up and it handles it well. I remember seeing one error message it didn't like. It had a translation issue, but that was kind of a blip, and it never affected any of what I did after that.
Nice. So here, I'm going to ask something which I think never gets talked about, but I want to ask you about, is there an emotional roller coaster as well? So of course we've talked about how you do the initial meeting, and Jim and Anthony talk about that as well. Initial meeting, and then you check in a few times, and that's all well and good. And clearly I'm seeing kind of the results that are possible, and I'm sure if your clients were here, they would have similar words to what Jim was saying, right? So this is pretty awesome. But is there an emotional roller coaster? Are there like high points during the project where you're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome? And are there low points where it's like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing, or something like that?
Yeah, I would say initially probably just a bit of apprehension, not knowing what you're going into, what the data is going to look like, if you can even connect or help. But I think the high point is just when the first visualizations, are shared back and forth, and just the excitement on their end just to see what's really possible. That's really great. I,
Oh my God.
I love
Yeah.
that part.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. All right. So, folks, Greg Baerg, again, we're going to add the links later on in the description, but bigwavebi.com. So, check it out. So, all right. So, thank you, mate. So, we are
Thank you.
ready for our next contestants. No, just kidding. Collaboration before competition. That's our motto is. So, next one up is Eamon Kelly. So we were supposed to have Kenneth Tyler, but there was some conflict. You are going to hear from Kenneth about his project, but just a little bit later on. So Eamon, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hang on.
All right, there you are.
Okay.
All right, do we have you
Let
on
me. Okay.
the
Hang on a second.
webcam?
Let me
Yep,
go
there
here.
you are. Nice. So we can see you.
Okay.
So yeah, we're the stage is yours. So tell us a bit about yourself, and then go ahead and walk us through the project.
Okay. Just before I do that, can you hear me,
Yep.
Avi? Okay.
Yep, I can hear you loud and
I just
clear.
want to check if I select one screen, am I locked into it, or I can flip between screens when I share my screen?
You can always unshare and then share again. I think. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if you,
Okay.
yeah, that's
All
one
right.
way to do it.
Well,
That
okay.
definitely works. Yeah.
Okay. So let me do. That might be a little bit of a challenge, but anyway, let's have a look.
It might let you switch. I have never tried that.
Okay. So let me kill that, and let me kill this, and
How many screens do you have, mate? It
so
sounds like you
yeah,
have
I
like
know. I have a bad habit of actually leaving them open.
no,
So
but seriously, you have more than
yeah,
two. It sounds like.
no, I just have the one screen, but I sometimes leave the items open, and I really shouldn't.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah.
That said, I know you're under the gun. So yeah, so
No,
I
actually,
operate
well,
out.
you're the last one, so unless
Okay,
you have a cutoff,
no, that's
you can
fine.
take your
No,
time.
I probably want to cover a reasonable amount, and I'm trying to shrink it into 15 minutes. So a little bit about myself. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a finance guy. Really into data analytics. Have been for some time.
Yeah. So,
My
Eamon,
company. Yeah.
you can take your time. All right. Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
that's cool.
yeah.
I actually speak quickly, you see, so
Okay.
I'll have to slow it down.
All right.
Okay, company is called All Over My Data out of Toronto, Canada. Essentially,
Wait.
looking at
The name of your company is all over my
All Over My
data.
Data. Yeah,
Oh man, that's
allovermydata.com.
beautiful. I have a feeling there's a story behind. I'd love to hear that sometime. All over
Well,
my
yeah,
data.
and I'm quite happy to share it, but if I do, because I'm Irish, this could be a very, very long conversation, and I don't think you want that at the moment.
Okay, guys.
So that said, basically, in terms of the project, and as I say, I hope I can dive into it here. Was with a UK manufacturing company, okay, and they use Microsoft Dynamics, but They use Microsoft Dynamics essentially just to post transactions. They don't do anything else with it. They don't write any reports out of it. They just take a data dump and they dump it into Excel, and they build out their P&L and balance sheets and so forth. So basically, it was really trying to harness the contents of the Dynamics and actually build out for them, which was the most important item, was a P&L. Okay, so that's really what we were attempting to do. And what I want to do ideally is this: is I'll cover off quickly the dashboards. I'll just blow through them. But what I really want to talk about is maybe a little bit of the logic behind the dashboards, and I'll keep it brief. But I think the logic is really important because I think it might be useful to many people looking at this. So let's see if I can actually get into this. Hyperlink it. I can. Good. So let me go here, and let me kill that, and I better leave that open just in case. Okay. So
the link you opened, we're not seeing that.
Oh, you're not. Oh, okay. Hang on a second.
Yeah. So I think if you share, so usually I share just the desktop and it shows everything. But if you share one app, it stays.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to open up these links very quickly because otherwise I'm going to be flipping back and forth. So let me go here. Yeah. And let me kill that. So sorry for the delay. Just sit tight for literally about 20 seconds, if that.
Yeah. Hey, no worries. I can definitely fill up time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So folks, by the way, who you listen to. So again, we talked about it at the beginning, but maybe some of you joined a little bit late. So these folks are part of our Pro Plus program. And if you go on our site and go to training and scroll all the way down, then you'd find details about that. The official name of this is Six Figures Power BI Consultant, and the goal is just that, to build this, kind of this new generation of successful Power BI professionals. Now, I'll admit, when I started this program, it was not just focused on consultants. It was a bit of a balance between folks who are doing great inside the company, and that's a great path to lead on, and folks who are, kind of out on their own. And oddly enough, there's quite a bit of overlap between these two leaders, right? I mean, they both act, feel, behave the same way, think the same way. And on my homepage, I share a little bit of that, of the characteristics that I saw about that. So you're listening to our Pro Plus members. You can go to training, and what you're listening to is the real Power BI project presentations, and we do this a few times a year. You can go to realpowerbi.com to get information on that. All right, Eamonn. So how are we doing on?
Okay, we're virtually there. Sorry for the delay. Okay, nice. So basically, hopefully that won't do. Okay, and let me try and reshare. I'm looking for the reshare button.
Oh, so just click the green share button, and I think it'll turn it off. Or wait, hold on. Hold on, I'll stop your screen sharing. Oh, did that work? No.
Okay, now let me share it. Okay, here. And let me share this instead. Okay, now I know it's small, but I'll blow it up now in a sec. Okay, so, okay. So basically.
So hold on. So yeah, this is again a manufacturing company in UK.
Yes.
And they're using Dynamics. They're dumping their transaction there and then just pulling it out and doing a lot of heavy work, it sounded like, in Excel to spit out these reports, manual work. Can you give us a size, just some idea of the company? I don't know, revenue, employees, or something
sub 20 million, sub 20 million UK. So I'm guessing that translates to about 30 million, a little under 30 million Canadian, probably 25 million US.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, who cares about Canadian? No, just kidding.
Yeah, no. Okay, so all right, let me just kick it off because I've got a reasonable amount to cover, I think. Firstly, I want to take you through the sort of main dashboard, our dashboards within the file. So basically, the client wanted to look at their financial statements with heavy emphasis on profit and loss. Okay, so I'll blow through a number of the dashboards. Quite happy to take questions. I'm going to say, if possible, could we run them, if there's any questions, at the end, just because I think I might run out of time. So basically, first item we're looking at here is really just an income statement. It's DAX heavy, so it's templated, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, we've taken the contents of their Dynamics, And we've just presented it in a manner that they want to see it, with, you know, indentation and gaps here, and gross profit. They didn't want gross profit percentage or net profit percentage. So we've presented in the manner that they want to see it from a financial statement perspective. Firstly, that's DAX heavy. Secondly, we did kind of exactly the same, but on this side here, we ended up, and this is really just for show purposes. This is not how some of their dashboards look. This is just for illustration purposes. We did exactly the same on the right-hand side, but we did it with M code heavy, okay? Because DAX heavy, and we'll get into it in a moment, means it's kind of a one-trick pony, in as much as you can present the information in the manner that they want to see it, but you can't do much with it beyond actually, you know, looking at it. You can't actually play with it much because it's DAX heavy. When you do exactly the same with a heavy amount of M code, then it's pretty much a pivot table where you can drill into absolutely everything that's coming out of their financial statements, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Keep going.
I'll keep going. I'll keep going, and I'll get into the weeds a little bit. So basically, that's what they wanted. We did some sort of additional dashboards. This is just profit and loss actual v budget. So actual v budget and the differential from a dollar and a percentage perspective, where we're flagging any items where actual exceeds budget, such that they, from a conditional formatting perspective, such that they can actually drill into it and see what might be causing it. We've up at the top here is just the key numbers: total sales, purchases, direct costs, overheads, net profit or loss. It goes green or red depending on what it is, a profit or a loss. And on the right-hand side is really just looking at, from a profitability perspective, both year-to-date actual v budget, and then the differential in terms of how we're doing year-to-date. And here we're looking at a waterfall chart where we're looking at sales versus costs and profit or loss accordingly. And then on the right-hand side, we've just got a bunch of slices to allow us sort of step into and cut it up in a manner in which the client wants to cut it up. So that's one of the dashboards. Second dashboard is, again, focusing on the P&L, but slightly different emphasis in terms of, we're looking at, in this particular visual here, we're looking at, from a monthly perspective, January through to July, which is the data we had at the time. And we're looking at the monthly sales, the monthly purchases, monthly direct expense, and the monthly overhead actuals, which are the main criteria within the P&L. And then we're looking at what percentage does each of these months make up versus the total amount. And that, of course, is dynamic. As we add more months, these numbers will change. So just to give them a sense of, you know, how they're doing from a percentage perspective in each of the key areas within their P&L.
Hey, Eamonn, is it possible to zoom in just a little bit more?
Oh, sorry.
Would it let you do that?
I don't.
Hang on. The mouse wheel, maybe?
No, this is.
Okay.
Hang on a second.
Worries. Keep going. This is good enough.
Is it really small?
No, this is well legible to me. Yeah. And
okay.
Yeah.
Apologies, guys, because I had to hide the numbers, and I wasn't exactly sure how to do it.
This is good enough. Keep going.
But okay, fine. So basically, we're looking at, as I say, the key areas, and looking at the percentage breakdown from a monthly perspective in relation to the total amount, and that's dynamic. It changes as the total amount changes as we build in new months. Down here is just getting into the weeds a little bit within the P&L, again on a monthly basis. Right-hand side here is a line chart, just looking at the trend both from a sales and a trend from the key areas within the P&L. How we're doing on a monthly basis. And up here is just your ability to segment it and step into just particular areas from a slicer perspective. Next one was, we called it Pareto, not exactly Pareto, but basically the client wanted the ability to step into the expense side of things and see the highest spend by area. So if they stepped into purchases, they wanted to be able to see, well, what's our highest spend, our next spend, etc. And then what percentage of the total spend for, let's say, purchases, what is that making up? So that they can quickly do a Pareto analysis mentally and say, well, look, this bunch here is making up about, say, 65%. So maybe let's focus on these amounts. And in addition, they wanted, and we included, the ability to look at, say, the first item here, which is raw materials, which is running them into the millions. What they wanted to see, well, how we know we're spending the most amount of money in this department, 41% of the total spend goes to raw materials. How are we doing when we look down in this visual here, actual v budget, and what's the differential? So are we overspending or are we underspending? So they want that sort of visibility, and so we added that matrix as well for them. And then we went into some flexed budgets. Essentially, they compare actual budget, but they set the budget at the start of the year. So, come mid-year, if they're way off on the budget, they wanted to set things up such that they could actually compare the actuals with now a flexed budget. So we just wrote some DAX to actually build out a flex budget and then compare that flex budget against actual, both in a dollar and a percentage term that we see here. Again, the numbers are up here, goes red, goes green, depending on whether it's positive or negative. And these are just the key areas in terms of under and overspend. Again, from a conditional formatting perspective, we're only highlighting stuff that they should look at in red. Everything else we don't bother highlighting. Now, there's probably a bunch more, but I don't want to slow down the process. But that was, like, should we say, more of the key areas that they wanted to look at. Not exactly the most advanced relationship in terms of what we're looking at here. We've got two fact tables designated with an F for fact tables, budget and transaction. We've got two lookup tables, D general ledger and D dates for dimension. And we've got this outlier here to allow us build heavy DAX when we're building out financial statements for the P&L. Well, P&L, balance sheet, and indeed cash flow, because it's exactly the same. And then these are just our measure tables here. So this is the model and the relationships within the model. So that was the first thing I wanted to cover off. I'm quite happy to jump into any of that if you want to. But really, what I wanted to do was actually step into some of the logic behind this, because I think that's where people may actually get more benefit than actually me talking through particular dashboard. So let me just step into the logic, and just want to talk through this very briefly. In terms of building out financial statements that we want to, and apology guys, I'm looking at my screen, so if it looks like I'm not actually paying attention, apologies, I'm just seeing my screen here. So so from a financial statement perspective, particularly larger companies, when they're putting out their accounts that say the TSX, they need balance sheet, cash flow, and P&L, and they want it in a particular format. And what we're doing here is actually giving them the exact format they need, such that they can push that out to either, if they're a private company, their shareholders, or indeed if they're a public company, they can push it right out to the TSX with little or no changes to it. So what we've done here from a financial statement perspective, where we're looking now just at the P&L, is we looked at it in two ways. We went DAX heavy, and then we went M code heavy. And the distinction I would make with both is that, DAX heavy is kind of like, if you were in the army, it's like wearing your dress uniform. It's kind of a one-trick pony. It looks really good, but you can't do much with it once it's built out. But, you can build it out from a templated perspective, any which way you want. But you can't actually interrogate it much. Whereas when we go M code heavy on the financial statements, then we can interrogate the exact same data right down to, what did we spend in July on the 21st of July. So, and that's all being driven from the financial statements right into the data. Okay. So
Eamonn, man,
yeah.
I definitely would ask you more about this Q&A, because generally
Okay.
everything that I teach and the way I think is the opposite, where DAX is ultimate flexible. I always say define once, use everywhere, and
Yep.
M gets hard coded. So I'll hold on to that, but yeah, you keep going.
No, totally, and we'll chat about it, and hopefully, and I totally get where you're coming from, but totally, we'll maybe get into the weeds a little bit on this. So that said, let me just step into DAX heavy, okay? And I'll cover this really quickly. But so DAX heavy in terms of blowing out a set of financial statements for this company, essentially 4 steps. We've built out a template, which we see here. Then we've built out four key pieces of DAX. Then we've manipulated both a table and a matrix to make sure that from a presentational perspective, it actually sits the way we want to sit in terms of indentation, gaps, percentages, all of that sort of stuff. So let me just talk for 1 minute on this very quickly, and then we'll move to M code heavy. So DAX heavy is essentially what we're looking at here. We're building out a template based entirely on how the client has actually built out their P&L in this instance. So the template is derived precisely from, we're re-engineering their P&L, and we're building out our template as the client presents the information in the way they present it, because every client is slightly different. And all we see here from a template perspective is a 3-columned table, which is an index to keep everything in the order we want to see it, which is a second one would be a normalized item column, which is the column we use when we're writing DAX. And the third one here is the income statement item column, which is the column we use when we want to present it in the way we want to present it, with indentations and spaces, etc. Okay, so basically, that's the first step with the DAX heavy, is really just building out this template. Once we've done the template, we're just really writing 4 sets of DAX measures. We're writing a simple amount item, an aggregator. Then we're building out an actual measure, which is segmenting both revenue and expenses such that we can get down to a profit figure in terms of the numbers we're looking at. And then the third block we're looking at is really building out roll-ups to allow us calculate what is the total amount for the likes of, say, total revenue, total purchases, total direct expenses, gross profit, net profit. So, and this is just a simple calculate using the measure we've just calculated here, and then using the dimension within one of the lookup tables, the D general ledger, to segment this information. And then all we've done is taken the exact same information here, and we've actually looked at historical last year using the date add function. But the key bit here, so the fourth bit here, is really just this particular measure, which allows us, because let me just back up here, understand that this template that we're looking at is not connected to the model. So the fourth measure allows us, using switch true logic, it allows us actually take the contents of our F transaction table and drop it into the templated table in the manner in which we want to see it. So bottom line here is that when we're looking at the fourth measure, really this is just a variable measure where we define, firstly, very quickly, current item, and the current item is looking at the templated table up here, and we're looking at the normalized column. So we're saying that would be the current item. And then we're using switch true logic, saying essentially a nested if statement, where we're saying, look, that if the current item, i.e. if the row in that column equals total revenue, then just drop the measure we've just calculated up here into that row. And essentially what we're doing is we're populating all the totals within the template. And then this catch-all down here is simply an iterator where we're saying, filter across the D general ledger table, looking specifically at the subcategory dimension. And we're saying, let's when that actually equals the current item, which we've defined up here, then let's collapse this table, which will automatically collapse the F transaction table. And now let's calculate the measure, which is the measure up here, the actual, which is where we segmented both our revenue and expenses. Hopefully that makes sense. So bottom line is this: is all we've done from a DAX heavy perspective is this, keep it sort of high level, is that we've built out a template in the manner we want to see it. That template's derived precisely from how the client actually presents their data to the market. And then we've written some DAX, 4 key bits of DAX. And the switch true logic allows us populate the contents of the template, which has no connection to the model. And basically it populates it in the manner in which we want to see it, which is the indentations, the gaps, etc. Okay. So that's DAX heavy. And DAX heavy, from my perspective, if I go back here, is this. You can make it very sexy and very, very interesting, but try to do much with it in terms of interrogating that puppy, and it becomes really rather difficult. And I think it's mostly because we're using switch true logic. And once we start adding sort of format into, once we start adding percentages, say if we do GP percentage, gross profit percentage, or net profit percentage, then we really do sort of like slow our ability to do any sort of interrogation down. That said, I want to flip from, assuming you guys aren't bored to tears with this stuff. If you're not, I'm going to just flip it into M code heavy, because this becomes really, really important. Because here's the kicker, certainly from my perspective, is you can build out a very fancy P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow for your client. And if it's all DAX code heavy, I can't do much with it, but I can make it really pretty in terms of how we're doing it, because we're using switch true logic. But if we do more M code heavy, then it becomes quite interesting. And hopefully, okay, we're into M code heavy here. So let me see if I can, I just want to make sure that everything is clear here. Okay, let me just go here. Okay, so from an M code heavy perspective, again, keep in mind, we're looking at P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow that we would push out to the TSX or some similar exchange. And what we're doing here is this, is look, we're saying that on the left-hand side is our DAX heavy in terms of presentation. On the right-hand side, it's an exact mirror. It's just not as sexy, okay? And what we've done here is this, is the right-hand side allows us to drill into any aspect of these numbers. So when your CFO or the CEO says, you know what, could you tell me more about direct labor? It's really difficult to drill into that based on the DAX heavy information. But once we go M code heavy, you can drill, to 5-6 levels so easily, and they'll drill right into the detail.
Can you zoom in on that?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Nice,
yes,
thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, okay. So bottom line is this, is look, so what we're looking at here is we've discussed DAX heavy. Now we're getting into M code heavy. And this is where I think it becomes really quite interesting. Because with M code heavy, now we can take this information, and it's an exact mirror of what we're putting out to the market, but we've attached essentially an exoskeleton to, or a mapped exoskeleton to our existing chart of accounts. And I'll show you that in a moment. And now we can actually take this same data, and we can treat it just like a pivot table. So we can drill any which way, cut it any which way we want, which becomes really interesting, because when the CFO says, this number within the financial statements that we just sent to the TSX, please, can we just look at the trends and patterns? You can go right into it. That said, let me just flip over and look at some of the logic here. So from a M code perspective, again, and I'll try and keep this very short, because another 2-3 minutes and then you guys can go to sleep. But this is important, I think. Here's really what we're working with from the client. It's not exactly, a huge amount of data, but we work with what we got. So we have their chart of accounts by number and by name. And we have, because they use Dynamics as really a holding bay from my transactional perspective, and then they dump it into P&L. This is kind of like how their P&L kind of looks within the Excel arena. But this P&L actually gives us a lot of information in terms of how they have structured their P&L. And all we want to do is we want to duplicate the structure so we can build our structure within an Excel spreadsheet very quickly, and then merge that with the DCOA, which is our lookup table, which is our chart of accounts lookup table, and merge both, and then use the extra dimensions to interrogate the contents of our F transaction and our budget. Okay, let me just, I'll walk you through that very quickly, or walk the audience that haven't fallen asleep yet. Here's the thing. So basically what we've done is we've taken their structure, and very quickly their structure here is telling us that, look, their P&L is split into turnover, split into purchases, split into direct expenses, and overheads. We got gross profit and net profit. And then within each of these, it's telling us, well, what are the key lines that they need to see? And also it's telling us for these same lines, what account codes actually feed into these lines. So it's giving us a lot of data. So from a chart of accounts perspective, it's almost giving us 3 levels of data: COA level 1, chart of accounts level 1, 2, and 3. And so basically what we're doing then is we're taking their information, and in an Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't take long. It probably takes a half hour. We're actually mapping their structure that this is the stuff they will send to it's a private company, to their directors and shareholders. And we're taking the structure that they actually use to build out their P&L, and we're actually building out the same structure from a COA level 1, chart of accounts level 1 in terms of detail, which is category. So we're taking our sales and we're marrying it up with the chart of accounts very quickly, and our purchases and our direct expenses. And then we're going to level 2, which is our subcategory, which is all of these items here, okay? And then we're actually adding an index column such that when we sort these dimensions, this category and subcategory, by the indexes that we're associating with each, we know that when we drop it on the canvas, it's going to present in the way we want to present it, not in the way that Power BI would want to present it, which is mostly alphabetical. So basically what we've done is we've said, here's the structure. Let's superimpose this structure on the chart of accounts. And once we've done that, we now have essentially an exoskeleton that we can now actually merge with the chart of accounts, the DCOA, which is our lookup table within the model. So essentially that's exactly what we've done. And this is the last one. So I promise you can go to sleep after this, and I'll keep it high level. So basically what we've done here is, and keep your eye down here. This is in the back end from an M code perspective, but we've just done a couple of things here. The steps here are as follows, really quickly, so we've ended up pulling in the chart of accounts into Power Query, and we've removed all of the extraneous columns that we don't need. So effectively what we've done here is we have our chart of account number and our chart of account name. And then we added a conditional column saying that if the number in our chart of account number column is less than 4,000 in this instance, it will be a balance sheet account. Above 4,000, it's indeed a profit and loss account. So that's just a conditional column. Then, given that we've built out this structured P&L, our exoskeleton, what we've done is we said now we want to now merge the contents of our structured P&L that we've just built out in Excel, and we want to merge it into this particular dimension table using our account number as the way to merge it. Okay. And effectively, all that's done is pulled in the entire structure in the manner in which the client is used to seeing it. Okay. And once we've done that, we've then added a second conditional column, but the conditional column here is for sales and expenses so we can just within the P&L, we can designate what's a sale and indeed what is an expense.
So,
and
then can I ask you a quick question? So,
yeah,
is it possible to do that without a merge and just use a lookup table? Can we just have that exoskeleton and just connect the GL account, or no? It's not going to work.
Yeah,
that way.
you probably could. You probably could.
Got it.
And the reason I did it that way was to enable me just to quickly build out that sort of structure within Excel. But could you pull that in as the lookup table? Yes, you could. You totally could.
Terrific.
So basically, we've merged it, we've pulled it in, and then I suppose finally, and this is important because we were dealing with a manufacturing company. The client said, "Well, could we look at our COA level 3, which is our account name? Could we have that in the order in which we put it in the accounts by account number?" Okay, so not by alphabetical, but by account number. The challenge is that should be an easy. Let's actually sort this column by these numbers, but because we're dealing with a manufacturing concern, we see that we have the same named general ledger account. In this instance, say fuel and oil. It's appearing in the profit and loss twice as an overhead, and because it's a manufacturing company, it's also appearing as a direct expense. So bottom line is it confuses Power BI, because Power BI is saying, well, you want to sort the contents of this by these numbers, but you're saying fuel and oil is 7,300, but you're also telling me it's 6,300. So what we ended up doing was this, again, very quickly. We ended up taking the contents of this file, and all we did was duplicate it very quickly. And then we did like 3 or 4 key things. All we did was we added an index to this same file, okay? And then we ended up saying, let's marry the index to the general ledger name file to give it a specific name with a number. And then we collapsed it such that the contents of this file only has the duplicate items within the P&L, okay, just the duplicates. And then once we did that, we disabled the load, etc. And we then pulled this puppy back up into our original D general ledger, our lookup table. So basically, we've pulled the contents of this file, which has now got like, for instance, it would have advertising 201, advertising 263. And then we essentially built out a conditional column once we did that, saying that if once we've pulled the contents of this duplicate file into our D general ledger, we said, let's build out a conditional column. That conditional column will be our index column, where we're saying, basically, pull the contents, the entire contents of the duplicate dimension that we've just pulled into this conditional column, and then fill every other space with our GL account name, okay? And the reason we did that was because we want to be able to, when the client says, can we see it by account number, we don't want to have all these little numbers on all of our accounts. We only want them on the ones that have duplicates, okay? So bottom line is now we're in a position to sort the contents of this column, which is all of the account name column, by the GL account number. All of that said, if we go back, what this has done is it just allowed us actually build out a structure such that we can now drill to, in this instance, 3 levels, and we can. It's set up in such a way. The structure is derived from how the client actually presents the P&L. Yeah, so to the world, if that makes sense. So bottom line is, what we have here is we have and I'm sorry, I've lost it. So now we have a P&L, a balance sheet, and indeed a cash flow, where from a presentational perspective, they want to see it like this, but from a ability to drill into any of these items, we can do that. So I suppose from my perspective, I think, well, the best of both worlds, the ability to drill in a manner in which they're used to seeing information. Brilliant. That said, I better stop now because I think you all have nodded off. So apologies. I'm done. Does that make sense? Or are you totally, it's like, Eamonn, that was so confusing. I just want to sort of die.
Yeah, well, so I'm sure different people have different reactions. We did have Raul comments and saying, hey, thank you very much for sharing this workflow. It can be extrapolated to structure templates to any type of client or industry, right? So, I mean, what
Yes,
you've
he
shown
can,
us, I
is
mean,
the answer.
the
He can.
P&L statement is one example, but of course, you can use this and now build P&L in two different ways. The DAX heavyweight, M heavyweight for any industry, but I think you can go beyond that, right? So any
I agree.
challenge which
Agreed.
is like that, right? Which is
Yes, totally.
oh, I need to show things in a very specific manner. It could be anything, could be peanuts, and could be something else, but
Yeah.
I also want to be able to drill down, right? So I think this is a great template for that. So what I'll share is that when we used to teach Power BI classes, what we would do is go in the order in which I use Power BI, which is first thing we go get the data using Query Editor, pull that in, and then create the relationships, write some DAX, and then finally do the visualization. And I changed it up totally backwards. And what I started doing was I would start day one with dashboards, show them all the visualization. They would have them already. They wouldn't even have to worry about it. I wouldn't talk about model, query editor, M, DAX, nothing at all. And I say visualizations, cool. And I say, okay, guys, now let's go under the cover and under the hood. And then I'll start showing them query editor. And then finally, I'll show them DAX with row context and filter context. And as the class went on, I let them know initially that I'm going to do it this way, and I said I give you permission to leave whenever you want. I wouldn't be offended, nobody else would be offended. So we would start with a class of 20, and by the end we would have 4. So Eamonn, yeah, right. So there are no uninteresting topics. There are no uninteresting topics, only uninterested people. So
No, I agree. No, I totally agree.
So if they left,
totally
that's good for us. So
No, for
now,
sure.
of course, I love doing this because I had so much fun with those 4 people who were left because we could just wallow in that stuff, and they would get excited about this stuff, right? As opposed to when I was teaching sequentially, I would do row context, filter context, and half of the room, like 16 people in the room, were like dozed off. And now I didn't have them, so the 4 people had so much fun. So it's okay. Some people dropped off. Hey, we're gonna hang out, and this was really good. So yeah, man, so all good. So folks, I'll admit that I just want to level with you that I didn't hold on to everything Eamonn said. And there was one moment where I asked a question. I'm like, hey, lookup table? I just did that just so I looked smart. Just so...
Now behave.
I didn't...
You bloody well are. Yeah, go on.
No, but I'll admit, I did that just so to myself I could say that, yeah, I'm understanding a little bit of it. I asked a smart question. So I'll admit, I didn't hold on to everything. But Eamonn, how long have you been working with Power BI? Power BI and its early incarnations, Power Pivot Dash.
Yeah, no, sure. I suppose historically, we had this conversation before, but historically, I did a lot within the Excel arena, particularly with Power Query, M code, and indeed pivot tables.
Yeah.
And then I probably stumbled across Power BI, I'm guessing 2.5 years ago.
But like, Power Query and stuff, that's still kind of Power BI. So can you tell me
it
year? Do you remember what year was it?
What, for the Power Query or for the Power BI?
Power Query, Power Pivot, whatever, right? I mean,
yeah,
I call all of that Power BI.
I'm guessing, like, I've always been within the Excel arena and then got involved in, I'm guessing, Power Query, probably M code, probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And then just realized the power of it just with Excel, because I didn't realize that Power BI existed.
Yeah.
And then when I saw Power BI, it's like, wow. And I talk about this a lot. I just love the fact with Power BI is that you can do so much, and also then you can flip it right in the back end. Mm-hmm. And if you need to, you can drill into Excel and you can pivot table the puppy to death and blow out some really interesting reports in addition to what Power BI has. Yeah. So
that's brilliant. So your company is all over my data. Is that the website as well? Allovermydata.com?
.com. Yes, it is. Yeah.
All right. Nice. And you're based out of Canada, but of course, gosh, where was this client that you were working with?
The UK.
Oh, of course, yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Great. So, of course, you're kind of open to helping companies all over the world. So, folks, if you're looking at your own financial statements, P&L statements, and you're thinking about how long it takes, and how sometimes you put it up there and people don't really trust the data. You yourself even don't trust the data. You kind of cross your fingers when you present, or you run into scenarios where they look at something in the P&L statement and they say, "Oh, cool, can we drill down on this?" and send a shiver down your spine or something. So you can see there's a different way to do it. You can. This maybe is not the simplest scenario in Power BI, but it definitely can be tackled, not just one and two ways, and in a way give you the best of both worlds. You can have your nicely formatted P&L statement, and you can have the ability to slice and dice. So if you need more help with that, go to allovermydata.com and reach out to Eamonn, and he'll be happy to help you, with that stuff. All right, so Eamonn, thank you so much. So we're gonna
Sure.
wrap up our session here, folks. And so you just I just want to make sure with this one, screen 2. All right, folks. Let's see. So I'm just gonna do a shout out to all of our Pro Plus members who are so amazing. So some you met today, some you have met earlier on our sessions, and some you're gonna meet next week when they present their real Power BI project. By the way, if you're interested in the Pro Plus program, then go to the training tab and scroll all the way to the bottom. Maybe we should move it to the top. But yeah, this is something new that we started this year. This is a small group program. In my mind, this will always be a small group, about 20 people. That's how we are right now. And I've certainly really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot from this group itself, and I'm certainly in awe of all the things that they're doing and that they're accomplishing. So go to training, learnpowerbi.com/training, scroll all the way down. And so the Pro Plus enrollment is opening next year, and if you click on that, you can join the wait list for that. So that's we're excited about that. We're looking forward to a new batch of our students, but of course, right now, man, the current students are hitting it out of the park, doing some pretty amazing stuff, and you saw some of that in action today. So I'm just going to read through some of the comments about this, see if there are any specific questions here. So today I don't want to take the focus away from these amazing folks. So we're not going to do Q&A. I know we always do that, but this one was just for our students for these kind of stories in my life. So let's see. Ollie's saying hi, great session. Thanks for sharing. Sylvester loved it. She said, "Hey, I'm happy I caught the session." So you guys, if you have any comments, if you found this useful, then let us know. And again, what I said in the beginning, that we wanted to show you kind of the real stuff and just talk about that and not have it be all buttoned down and as you see in the conference, because it gives you a wrong impression. Frankly, I would go to these conferences when I was starting out, and it can even be discouraging. You're like, "Oh, I can never do this." But of course, you saw a whole gamut of things. You saw Greg talk about the emotional roller coaster of how when you start on a project, you're always going to be a little bit apprehensive, and it's like, oh, you don't know what you're stepping into. But then there are those moments where you present something to the client and their eyes pop out, or they say, "Whoa!" Right? I mean, this is awesome, and that motivates you so much, right? But again, if you don't start on that journey, you're never gonna get to experience those moments. So if you enjoyed this, then let us know in the comments, and and share what you thought. I think our comments came in from our folks joining on the Learn Power BI as well. Greg loved Eamonn's stuff, really loved the detail. Charles really liked it, awesome job, loved the detail. All right. Eamon, thank you. Yep, and I'm sure earlier comments came in for other presenters as well. All right, folks, so we will see you next time. And again, next time, look forward to meeting additional individuals from our Learn Power BI program, and let's see who do we have scheduled. So we have Diego Lopez and Thomas Powers, and we might if it works out for other folks, we might add a few other folks as well. So I'll see you next time, and until then, power on.